Hey there, my name is Sandy. I'm a licensed realtor and licensed loan originator here in the Central Florida area. Today we're doing a video on what does it mean by days on the market. So what does days on the market means when it comes to selling or buying a home in real estate? Let's get into it. So remember guys to like and share. Keep forgetting to say this, right? Click on the notification button to be notified when we send out a new video, and also remember to like and share so we can reach more people with this information. Today is May 20 something. No, actually today is June 9th. Oh my gosh, June 9th 2025. That's how busy I've been. And the market is not great. The market is balancing itself out. It's not really a buyer's market. It's not really a seller's market. A lot of sellers don't really want to sell because they got lower interest rate. A lot of buyers don't really want to buy because they want to kind of save their money. They don't know if we're going in a recession or what's going on. I just heard today that the World Cup is not coming to the US anymore because of all the immigration and all the political stuff that's going on. So they're probably going to bring it over into Canada or Mexico. So lots of stuff going on the market. But if you're in the market and you need to buy or sell, because real estate will always keep going on no matter what's going on. Somebody have to buy and somebody will always have to sell, right? So real estate will not stop. So if you're on the market right now, you'll realize that a lot of the homes are sitting, right? So sellers and buyers are seeing the same thing. The homes are taking a little bit longer to sell because interest rates are high, the economy is not that stable, and a lot of moving parts are going on. So buyers are looking for a deal, and sellers are looking to capitalize on the most they could get for their homes. As a result of that, we have an increase in days on the market. What does that mean? Now, a buyer might see, let's take the buyer side first. A buyer might see days on the market, and they might say stuff like, well, this has been on the market for a long time, so maybe we could get a deal, which you probably could, because if it's a motivated seller and they really want to sell and it's sitting on the market for over a period of time, it's gonna, you might be able to come in with a lower offer and it might get accepted. The typical days on the market right now in the market we're in is 90 days. So most homes are taking up to 90 days to go under contract. So days on the market is from the day the property hits the market until it goes under contract or until it goes pending based upon the area you're in. So it's taken up to 90 days to get it on the contract. So that means 90 days for it to get an accepted offer, inspections done, and both parties sign the contract. So we're in a 90-day period right now. Now, we're in the summer market, spring summer market right now. So it's supposed to be the busiest time of the year for us, but it's not as busy comparing to earlier years, like right after COVID, like 21, 22, those kind of years. Even last year. This year's a little bit slower. So if you're in the market to buy a home, you may have some negotiating power if you could find a seller who is motivated enough. Because what some sellers are actually doing, they're either not selling and staying put, or they're putting the property up for rent and then doing something else, going to maybe buy something else for themselves or whatever it is they do, as opposed to selling for the lower price. So the difference in the market we came out back in 2008, 2009, 2007 when the market crashed, and that was a different market, because in that market we had a lot of predatory lending and people had very high interest rate and they were trying to get out of the interest rate, so they just were leaving the property. In this market, because we had such a low interest rate leading us to today, we have sellers who are saying, you know what, I don't have to sell, my interest rate is low, so if I'm not going to get my price, I'm not selling. However, there's always going to be someone that needs to sell. So if you're a buyer, you want to look for that motivated seller. And when you see the days on the market going over 90 days, 100 days, 120 days, there goes your bargaining skills right there. You could bargain that price if the seller is motivated enough. Now, a big days on the market does not mean, or a lot of days on the market doesn't necessarily mean the property was overpriced. It could just mean that there's not enough demand in that particular area, or maybe that home is bigger or more upgraded than other homes in the area, or maybe it's just not staged out well, or maybe it needs repairs. It could be so much different things. It doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad home, because I know buyers have the tendency of saying, well, this has been in the market for 100 days, so that means something is wrong with it. Why isn't nobody buying it? Doesn't mean something is wrong with it. It just means that there's probably not that much demand for that particular property. Maybe the seller is sticking out on their price. Maybe they're saying, I know the property is valued at X and I'm going to stick out at my price. Because in this market we're in right now, the homes that are selling are actually selling a little bit below market and not necessarily at market. So it doesn't mean if the seller is saying it's worth $350, it's not worth it, because we got to do a market analysis to determine this. But it could just be that we're not getting enough buyer to pay that price, and of course the buyer is what dictate the price. So if you're at $350 for an example, and two other people in your neighborhood decide to sell at $320 or $325 because they just want to get rid of the house or they have to sell, then yours is going to sit longer at $350, right? So you need to look at that as the buyer. That it doesn't mean because it's longer on the market, it's a longer stay on the market means it's not good or something is wrong with it. Also, when you see deals fall apart, like it will say back on the market, so that means the property was on the contract, the deal fell apart and it came back on the market, it does not necessarily mean it's a bad thing. It could mean that the buyer financing falls through, which is what the biggest problem is right now. So the buyer could have gone on the contract with the property, everything was good, inspection went well, they went on the contract, but for whatever the reason is, they could not qualify for the mortgage, so the financing fell, so hence the property could go back on the market. Now the property could also go back on the market in the case of there's an inspection problem, but most of the time from what I've seen is financing, because if there's an inspection problem, most of the time the seller will fix it. But you could have a picky buyer that says, well, the inspector says the air conditioner is at the end of its life, right? The seller might say, yes, at the end of its life, but it's still working, so I'll give you a home warranty or something, and I'll give you a home warranty on the AC. The buyer might say, I don't want a home warranty, I want you to replace it. And then there cannot be a meeting of the mind, so that deal could fall apart. So if a deal fall apart, doesn't necessarily mean there's something wrong with the house. Another buyer might come along and say, hey, I will buy the home. I know the AC is at the end of its life, but if you give me a 3-year home warranty, I'll buy it at that price. I'll buy it as it is. Some buyers will do it, some buyers will not. It depends. Now, if you're a seller, you're selling the home, and you're realizing that the days on the market are building up, you're not getting any offers. There are certain things you could do. Obviously, dropping the price would be the ideal. However, you could probably restage the home. You could probably redo the pictures. You could probably take care of any deferred maintenance that the property needs, and then put that in the listing. You can also do a pre-inspection, and you could tell the buyers, hey, I have a pre-inspection. I got the property inspected before, and we could send you a copy of that inspection before you make an offer. Of course, the buyer is going to want to do their own inspection, but at least they have something going on. So if you are a seller, and we do what we call pre-certified homes, where we do a home inspection up front before the property goes on the market. So we do this for our clients, so we could send a copy of that to the buyer or the buyer's agent. So if you do this up front, then that will also help the buyer put their mind at ease and say, oh, okay, this home was whatever the situation is, right? You have to pay attention to what the homes are going for in the market. So if you're saying, well, last year as a seller, last year the homes were selling at $500,000. So this year I'm going to put mine in the market for like $510,000 or $520,000. And then based upon negotiation, I could still end up back at $500,000. You really can't take that premise. What you need to do is see what properties sold in the last 90 to 180 days. I prefer the 90 days if you could find it. In your neighborhood, within a 2-mile, either in your development or within a 2-mile radius of a home comparable to yours that's sold in the last 90 days, because that's what the appraiser is going to do, unless you have an unusual home and you're going to do a cash buyer and the buyer doesn't care. But if it's a finance buyer, the inspector will take a look at what sold in the last 90 to 180 days incomparable to your home. Of course, sometimes it's hard to compare apples to apples. Sometimes it's apples to oranges. That means they have to make different modifications or adjustments. So maybe your home has 2,000 square feet and the last home sold at 2,200 square feet. If it had 2,200 square feet and it sold for less than what you're asking, then you got to figure out, did it have deferred maintenance? Why I'm thinking I should sell mine for $500, that one just sold for $485 and it had 200 square feet more, as an example. So you need to take all those things into consideration. But days on the market is not necessarily a bad thing. But if you're a seller and your days are piling up on the market, then we're going to need to figure something out, right? You got to figure out Well, first of all, are you selling it by yourself? Maybe you need to get a professional to help you. Do you have a professional? Maybe you need to figure out what they have been doing and what needs to be done to help the days on the market. Are you offering any home warranty to the buyer? Are you offering any incentive to help the buyer with their closing costs? Are you paying a buyer's agent commission? Just open a Pandora's box with that. So, in my opinion, real estate is still going on the way real estate has always been going on before they came up with this new rule of sellers have the right to know if they're paying a buyer's agent. The fact of the matter is sellers were always paying the buyer's agent all the time, and it's still happening now. So if you put your property on the market and you're telling your agent, listen, I'm not paying a buyer's agent, then guess what? You're cutting your property off to so many other agents that could show the property, right? So that's probably not the best idea, because that means you're telling the listing agent they're the only one that could show the property, or they're going to have to find their own buyers. Now, in this market that we're in right now, it's not the ideal situation to not participate with buyers. So it's a good idea to come up with a commission with your listing agent that the listing agent can cooperate and pay a buyer's agent if they were to bring a buyer. Because if they do bring a buyer, most of the time the listing agent is working on your behalf and the buyer's agent is working on the buyer's behalf. Now, what you can tell the listing agent is, listen, you're the agent on the property. So if you bring the buyer, I'm not going to pay you the full amount of commission. I'm not going to pay you whatever the full amount of commission is. I'm going to pay you half of it. Or I'm going to pay this amount if you bring up, if there's a buyer's agent selling the property. But if you're selling the property, I'm going to give you Y. So there's always room for negotiation, guys. But what I will tell if you're a seller is pay the buyer's agent. Cooperate with buyer's agent. Just make a deal with your listing agent how this is going to go down. But pay your buyer's agent, because you want as many agents as possible showing your home. And people are going to be looking at the home online. They're going to call their agent that they've been working with or that they have a signed contract with as a buyer's agent. The agents are going to contact your agent. They're going to say, hey, is your seller participating? If they say no, some agents might show it realistically, but most agents will not. They're going to go find a home that the seller is willing to pay a commission, because who wants to work for free? Literally, nobody wants to work for free, right? So that's what you need to look at when it comes to days on the market. So days on the market could be in favor to the buyer. Days on the market could be telling the seller, hey, maybe the home is priced too high, or maybe we need to do something to help us, right? Are we getting any offers? If so, what are the offers that we're getting? Did we make it to an inspection? What came up on the inspection? That will tell us what's going on the market, or why the property is not selling, right? It's not always price. Sometimes it's presentation, sometimes it's staging, sometimes it's accessibility. Maybe the home is not easily accessible because maybe there's tenants in there and the tenants don't want to show the property. So the days on the market is going to keep piling up. Maybe it's an Airbnb property and they don't want to show the property when they have guests in the home. So we got to wait for the guests to come out of the home. Maybe there are homeowners who want to be home when the home is being shown and they have all the stipulation of how it could be shown. So there could be restrictions in showing. So if there's restrictions in showing, that's going to also create a higher days on the market, because you can only show it during whatever time you could show it. So days on the market could work in your favor or not on your favor. But if you're a seller and buyers are seeing that your days on the market is getting high, they're more likely, and their agents are going to be telling them, hey, let's go in with a lower price. It's been on the market for so long and it's not selling. So maybe we could go in with a price. If they're motivated enough, maybe they might give you a discount. We don't know, but that's something we could try. If you're a seller and your days on the market is piling up, you want to have a good talk with your agent if you have a listing agent. If you're by yourself, you may want to get some professional advice, not necessarily list with an agent, but at least find out what's going on. How restrictive are you with your showing time? Are you priced competitively? Because in this market, you have to be priced competitively. Are you offering any kind of incentives to the buyer? What does your home look like on the computer? Because most homes, believe it or not, people are looking at the homes on the computer first, and based upon what they see, they may or may not come look at your home physically. Gone are the days when people are driving around just looking at curb appeal. Curb appeal is important, don't get me wrong, but also how does it look online? That's where people are buying first. All right? Comment on the bottom, let me know what you think and what your experiences have been with increased days on the market. Our information should be somewhere up here. You could call, text us Let us know what you think, and if you wanted a complimentary consultation regarding days on the market on your property, let me know. If you're a buyer and you're like, hey, I need to buy a home and there's some homes in my neighborhood and they've been sitting on the market for a very long time, what does that mean? We could also discuss that with you. Thank you so much for listening, guys. I will see you on the next video.